This is Everyday Tension. Real stories based on real experiences about everyday conflicts people rarely talk about. This story was shared anonymously. If you'd like, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Here's what happened.
So, this happened last night, and I'm still cringing into another dimension. I've been repeating that sentence in my head all morning. It's the kind of thing you say to try and make it funny, to take the edge off, but the edge is still there. It's a sharp, stupid little edge. My girlfriend, Clara, and I have been together for 2 years. It's been good. It's been normal good. We met at a friend's barbecue, the kind where you end up talking by the drinks cooler because it's the only shade. She was holding a plate with a burger that was dripping ketchup onto her shoe, and I handed her a napkin. It wasn't a big moment. It was just a thing that happened. We started dating, and then we kept dating. We moved in together 8 months ago, into a small apartment with windows that rattle when the bus goes by. We fight about dishes, and whose turn it is to take the recycling down. She leaves her hair ties on every available surface. I leave coffee mugs on the counter instead of in the sink. Normal stuff. The idea of proposing didn't come as a lightning bolt. It was more like a slow, steady pressure that built up over time. I'd see a couple with a kid at the park, or we'd go to a wedding, and I'd think, yeah, okay, that could be us. It wasn't a frantic, romantic need. It was a logical next step. I love her. She's my person. The idea of her not being around feels like a logistical problem I don't want to solve. So, I started thinking about it. Casually at first, then more seriously. I didn't have a ring. I hadn't planned a grand gesture. I'm not that guy. The thought of coordinating a flash mob or hiring a skywriter makes me break out in a cold sweat. But I know Clara's dad, Robert, is old-fashioned. Not in a bad way. He's just from a different time. He wears pressed slippers around the house. He calls the remote control the clicker. He believes in certain protocols. And one of those protocols, I knew, was asking for a father's blessing. It's an outdated concept, and Clara would probably roll her eyes if she knew I was even considering it. But it felt important to him, and I wanted to start things off on the right foot. I wanted him to like me. I've always wanted him to like me. So, the plan, such as it was, formed. We were going over to her parents' house for Sunday dinner, like we do almost every week. Her mom, Linda, makes a roast. Robert carves it with this overly serious, ceremonial air. We talk about work, the weather, the neighbors. It's pleasant. It's fine. I figured I'd find a moment to pull Robert aside, say my piece, get the blessing, and then I could figure out the actual proposal later. Simple. The whole day leading up to it, I was fine. I mowed the lawn. I did a load of laundry. I wasn't nervous. It was just a conversation. But as we drove over, Clara in the passenger seat humming along to the radio, my hands started to feel a bit damp on the steering wheel. By the time we pulled into their driveway, the tidy brick house with the perfectly trimmed hedges, my heart was doing this low, thumpy thing in my chest. Not panic, just awareness, like I was about to take a minor oral exam. Dinner was the same as always. The roast chicken, the mashed potatoes, the green beans with almonds. Linda asked about my work project. I gave a vague answer. Robert talked about the trouble he was having with squirrels at the bird feeder. Clara told a story about a difficult customer at the boutique where she manages. I laughed in the right places. I passed the salt. But my mind was running on a separate track, rehearsing the line. I'd like your blessing to marry your daughter. 14 words. I said them silently, over and over, with each bite of potato. Blessing to marry your daughter. After dessert, Linda started clearing plates. Clara got up to help her. This was my chance. Robert was pushing his chair back, about to retreat to his recliner in the living room. "Robert," I said. My voice came out a little higher than usual. "Could I, talk to you for a second? In the other room?" He looked at me, his eyebrows lifting slightly. "Sure," he said. He didn't smile. He never really smiles much. He's a kind man, but his default expression is one of mild, polite assessment. We walked into the living room. The television was off. The only light came from a standing lamp in the corner, casting long shadows. It was quiet. I could hear the clink of dishes from the kitchen, Clara and her mum talking about something, their voices a muffled backdrop. I stood there. Robert stood across from me, hands in the pockets of his khakis, waiting. He's a tall man, taller than me, and he has this way of standing very still. I felt like a kid called to the principal's office. My brain, which had been faithfully looping the 14 words, chose this exact moment to empty itself completely. It was like someone pulled a plug. All the rehearsed sentences drained away, leaving nothing but a hollow, echoing silence and the frantic thump of my own pulse in my ears. My mouth was dry. I opened it. I meant to say, "I'd like your blessing to marry your daughter." That's what I meant to say. What came out was, "I'd like to marry you." 4 words, clear as day, no stammer, perfect diction. For about half a second, there was just the sound of the sentence hanging in the air between us. I heard it. I understood the words, but they didn't connect to my intention. It was like hearing a stranger speak. Then the connection snapped into place with a physical jolt. A wave of pure, undiluted horror washed over me, so intense I felt dizzy. My stomach dropped. My face went instantly hot. Robert's expression didn't change. He just stared at me. His head tilted maybe a quarter of an inch. He was waiting for the rest of the sentence, the part that would make it make sense. I panicked. The backpedaling started before I could even form a coherent thought. It was pure, instinctive verbal flailing. I said, too loud. "I want to marry your daughter, not you, unless you're into that. And not that I mean you're not or, oh my God, I'll just go jump off a cliff now." The words tumbled out, each one making it worse. "Unless you're into that? What did that even mean? Not that you're not attractive." I was complimenting her dad's looks while proposing to him. My brain had fully surrendered. It was just my mouth, operating on its own disastrous agenda. Robert's face was still frozen in that polite, waiting mask. But then his eyes changed. They crinkled at the corners. His lips, usually in a firm line, twitched. A low sound started in his chest, a sort of choked rumble. It burst out as a full, loud, snorting laugh. He bent forward slightly, his hand coming up to cover his mouth, but the laughter kept coming, hard and wheezing. That's when I realized Clara was in the doorway. She must have come in from the kitchen. She was holding a dish towel. Her eyes were wide, her mouth open in a silent O. She had heard it. She had heard the worst of it. She looked from my bright red, probably sweating face to her father, who was now laughing so hard he had tears streaming down his cheeks, one hand braced on the back of the armchair for support. She let out a shriek of laughter, doubling over, the dish towel pressed to her stomach. "Oh my God," she gasped between laughs. "Oh my God, Ben, what did you do?" I just stood there. There was nowhere to go. The floor would not swallow me. The ceiling offered no escape. I was just a man in a beige living room who had just asked his girlfriend's father to be his husband. Robert finally got his breath back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He was still chuckling, his shoulders shaking. He looked at me, his face softer than I'd ever seen it. "Well," he said, his voice rough from laughing, "I appreciate the offer, son. I really do. But I think my wife would object." That set Clara off again. She was leaning against the doorframe, helpless. Linda came in then, wiping her hands on her apron. "What in the world is going on in here? I can hear you cackling all the way in the kitchen." Clara just pointed at me, incapable of speech. Robert composed himself, though a smile kept breaking through. "Ben here just asked for my hand in marriage." Linda's eyebrows shot up. She looked at me, then at Robert, then back at me. A slow smile spread across her face. "Is that right? And what did you say, dear?" "I told him I was spoken for," Robert said, and they both started laughing again, a comfortable, shared laughter that excluded me completely in the best and worst possible way. I managed a weak smile. It felt like a grimace. "I was trying to ask for your blessing," I said, directing it mostly at the floor. "To marry Clara." The words got mixed up. "He said I was attractive," Robert added, deadpan, and Clara nossed it all over again. That was the end of the conversation. The actual request, the blessing, it all got swallowed up by the joke. Robert, still smiling, clapped me on the shoulder as we walked back to the kitchen. "You have my blessing, Ben. God knows you've got the guts to ask me. You can handle my daughter." It was supposed to be reassuring. It just felt like part of the bit. The rest of the evening was a blur of quiet humiliation for me, and immense entertainment for them. Every few minutes, Clara would look at me and start giggling again. Robert would make a comment, Robert would make a comment like, "Should I wear white to the ceremony?" Or, "We'll have to think of a suitable dowry." Linda kept refilling my wine glass, a sympathetic but amused glint in her eye. We drove home in near silence. Clara was scrolling on her phone, a smile still playing on her lips. I was concentrating on the road, replaying the moment in a hellish loop. I'd like to marry you. The simplicity of it, the finality. "Well," Clara said as we pulled into our parking spot. "That was memorable." "Yeah," I said. She reached over and squeezed my knee. It was sweet, in a horrifying sort of way. And Dad was thrilled. You know that, right? "He's been hoping you'd ask about that for months." "I know," I said. And I did know, intellectually, but the knowledge was buried under several tons of fresh embarrassment. The next morning, it started. A text from Linda in the family group chat. It was a photo of Robert looking thoughtful with a heart emoji next to his face. The caption, "Thinking of my other son-in-law," Clara replied with a crying laughing emoji. Then, a message from Clara's brother, Mark, who lives out of state. Just a screenshot of the group chat with a single word, pros, plus, plus, Clara explained. His reply was instant. "No way, he proposed to Dad, undead," followed by a string of emojis. By lunchtime, it felt like everyone knew. Clara showed me a post on her private Instagram, a picture of us from last Christmas. Her caption, "Remember when my boyfriend was just my boyfriend? Simpler times. Now he's also my dad's fiancé." All awkward still yes. Her friends were commenting, asking for the story. She was telling them in bits and pieces, in the comments. "I went to work. I have a job in an office, doing logistics for a small shipping company. We were tall. It's mostly spreadsheets and emails. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on container dimensions and freight rates, but my mind kept drifting back to the living room, the lamplight, the feel of the words in my mouth. My colleague Dave from the next cubicle leaned over. "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I said. "Just a weird weekend." "Everything all right with Clara?" Yeah. Great. Just a family dinner thing." He nodded, not really interested, and went back to his computer. I was grateful for the disinterest. I didn't want to tell the story. Every time I thought about telling it, I had to relive it. The shame was a physical thing, a tightness in my chest and throat. That night, Clara was in a great mood. She made pasta and talked excitedly about how we should actually get engaged now. I mean, you've got the blessing. The hard part's over. Well, except for the actual asking me. And you've sort of already done that, but to the wrong person. She grinned. Very funny, I said, pushing my food around my plate. Oh, come on, she said, her smile fading a little. It's funny, Ben. It's a funny story. It's not a big deal. I know it's not a big deal, I said, but my voice sounded flat, even to me. It felt like a big deal to me. It felt like I'd revealed some fundamental lack of coordination between my brain and my mouth, a flaw that could resurface at any critical moment. My dad loves you, she said, reaching for my hand. He's never laughed that hard in his life. He told Mung this morning it was the best thing that's happened all year. That's good, I said. I tried to mean it. The week went on. The texts and jokes within the family continued. Robert sent me a link to an article about same-sex marriage laws with the note, making sure our union would be legal, just in case. Mark started calling me Pops or Dad Jr. when we were on the phone. Clara began referring to any future wedding planning as your first wedding and your second wedding. As in, for your second wedding, to me, do you think we should have a chocolate fountain? I laughed along. I had to. What else could I do? To protest would make me a bad sport. To lean into it felt impossible. So I just existed in this middle space, smiling tightly, offering a weak chuckle, waiting for the novelty to wear off. But it didn't wear off. A month later, we were back at her parents' house for dinner. The moment I walked in, Robert said, "Ah, my almost husband. Welcome." It got a laugh from Linda. Clara nudged me with her elbow. During dinner, out of nowhere, Linda said, "You know, Ben, if things don't work out with Clara, you'll always have a place here." She said it kindly, with a warm smile. It was a joke, a family joke. I was part of the family now, and this was my initiation, my hazing. This stupid 5-second verbal misfire was my permanent brand. I started having a recurring dream. In it, I'm in the living room again. I open my mouth, and instead of the wrong sentence, nothing comes out at all, just air. I stand there, silent, while Robert's expectant face slowly turns to confusion, then to disappointment. In the dream, that silence feels worse than saying the wrong thing. When I wake up, I'm relieved for a second, and then I remember reality, and the hot embarrassment seeps back in. I bought a ring. 2 months after the incident, as I'd started calling it in my head. I didn't plan another special moment with her family. I didn't want to give the universe another chance to twist things. I chose a normal Tuesday. We were on the couch, watching some forgettable TV show. Her feet were in my lap. I had the ring box in the pocket of my hoodie. My heart was pounding, but it was a different kind of nerves. Not the fear of formalities, but the fear of her answer, which was a purer, better fear. I paused the show. She looked at me, curious. "Everything okay?" "Clara," I said. My voice was steady. I took the box out. I didn't get down on one knee. It didn't feel right for us. I just held it out, opened it. "Will you marry me? For real this time?" "Just you." She stared at the ring, then at my face. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Of course," she said. "Of course I will." She leaned forward and kissed me, and for a minute, it was perfect. It was just us, in our apartment, with the TV paused on some actor's face. Then she pulled back, looked at the ring again, and started laughing. Wait, does Dad know about this? Is he going to be jealous? And just like that, we were back in it. She called her parents immediately. I could hear Robert's booming laughter through the phone. "Tell Ben congratulations," he said. "And tell him my offer still stands if he gets cold feet," Clara relayed the message, grinning at me. We told our friends. The story of the botch blessing had already made a rounds, thanks to Clara's social media and Mark's big mouth. So when we announced the real engagement, the first question from everyone was, "Did you ask her dad properly this time?" It was always followed by a laugh. My role was clear. I was the well-meaning klutz, the lovable goof. It was a nice role, in a way. Harmless, better than being the jerk or the cheapskate, but it was the only role I had now. We started planning the wedding, or Clara started planning, and I nodded and gave opinions when asked. Every decision seemed to loop back to the incident. Clara was looking at wedding bands online. "What do you think of this one for you? Simple, classic, and we could get a matching one for Dad." She wasn't serious. She was never serious about that part. But she said it. We met with a florist. Clara talked about centerpieces. The florist, a friendly woman in her 50s, asked how we met. Clara told the story. Then she said, "And when he proposed, he actually asked my dad first." The florist laughed. "Oh, that's priceless. You'll have to tell that story in your vows." I smiled. It was a thin smile. My own parents were delighted. My mom cried when I told her, on a separate call where Clara wasn't in the room. "Oh, Ben, that's wonderful." Then, after a pause, she said, "Clara's father, he was pleased?" There was a hint of concern in her voice. She'd heard the story from me, told in a rushed, mortified phone call the day after it happened. "He was pleased," I said. "He hasn't stopped joking about it." "Well, that's good," she said, but her tone suggested she understood the particular torture of a never-ending family joke. The engagement party was at Clara's parents' house. It was a nice backyard gathering. Friends, family. Robert had fired up the grill. I was standing with a beer, talking to a couple of Clara's uncles, when Robert raised his glass and called for attention. "A toast?" he said. The crowd quieted. Clara stood beside him, beaming, her arm linked through his. "As most of you know," Robert began, his voice taking on a jovial, performative tone, "this isn't Ben's first proposal in this family." A wave of knowing laughter rippled through the guests. My friends from college were there, and they whooped. I took a long sip of my beer. "He came to me a few months back," Robert continued, putting a hand on his chest. "Looked me right in the eye, in my own living room, and said those 4 words every man longs to hear, 'I'd like to marry you.'" The laughter was louder now. People were looking at me. I raised my beer in a feeble salute, my face hot. "Now, I was tempted," Robert said, winking. "But Linda here has a jealous streak." More laughter. Linda swatted his arm playfully. So I had to turn him down. Told him he'd have to settle for my daughter instead. He pulled Clara closer and kissed her temple. And I can't think of a better man for the job. Seriously. His voice lost its jokey edge for just a second, and he looked right at me. "We're lucky to have you, Ben. Welcome to the family, officially. Even if you tried to join it a little sideways." Everyone clinked glasses. Clara came over and hugged me. "See?" she whispered. "He loves you." And I knew he did. In that moment, with his sincere eyes over the rim of his joking, I knew he genuinely liked me and was happy I was marrying his daughter. That was the worst part, in a way. The joke was rooted in affection. It wasn't malice. It was just relentless. At work, my engagement became official office news. Dave from the cubicle next door had gotten married the year before. He came over, all smiles. "Congrats, man. Heard you pop the question. How'd she take it?" "She said yes," I said, turning back to my computer. "Nice. Big romantic setup?" "Not exactly," I said. He waited for more. I didn't offer it. I'd learned that if I didn't tell the story, sometimes people didn't know the other part. Clara's social circle knew. My family knew. But my work colleagues, my more distant friends, they might just know I was engaged. I started to guard that. I wanted a space where I was just a guy who got engaged, not the guy who proposed to his father-in-law. But Clara didn't see it that way. To her, it was our funniest shared story. It was our story. She told her hairdresser. She told the woman at the bakery where we were looking at cake samples. She told the wedding photographer during our consultation. "We have to get a picture of Ben and my dad looking lovingly into each other's eyes," she said. And the photographer, a trendy guy with a man bun, laughed and said, "Absolutely, we can do a whole Lost Love series." I stopped protesting. It was easier. It became a reflex to just smile and nod, to let the wave of the joke wash over me. The engagement period was supposed to be this happy, glowing time. And it was happy. I was happy to be marrying Clara. I loved our life. But the happiness had this constant, low-frequency hum of embarrassment running through it, like a faulty electrical wire. One night, about 3 months before the wedding, we were lying in bed. The room was dark. "Are you excited?" Clara asked, her head on my shoulder. "Yeah," I said. "Of course. You don't sound excited." "I am. I'm just tired." She was quiet for a minute. "Is it the thing with my dad?" she asked quietly. "Is it still bothering you?" I sighed. I didn't know how to answer without sounding like I was rejecting her family, or being overly sensitive, or ruining the fun. "It's not bothering me," I said, which was both true and a lie. It didn't bother me in the sense that I was angry or upset with anyone. It just was. A fact of my life now, a permanent footnote to my own proposal. "It's just a joke, Ben," she said, her voice soft. "It's how my family shows they like you. They tease. Mark got teased for years about the time he put diesel in his petrol car. Mum still calls him the mechanic. It's love. I know," I said. And I did know. "It's fine. Really." She kissed my shoulder. "Okay. I love you." "I love you too." But after she fell asleep, I lay there awake. I thought about the wedding day itself. I knew there would be speeches. Robert would give a speech. Mark would give a speech. They would tell the story. Everyone would laugh. I would have to stand there or sit there and take it. I would be the punchline at my own wedding. The thought made my skin feel too tight. The next day, I made a decision. A small, pointless one. I went out at lunch and bought a very nice, very expensive bottle of single malt scotch, Robert's favorite. That weekend, when we went over for dinner, I brought it. "What's this?" Robert asked, taking the bottle. "A peace offering," I said. I tried to say it lightly, or, I don't know, a thank you for everything. He looked at the label, his eyebrows raised. "This is too much, Ben. This is a serious bottle." "I know," I said. "I just wanted to." He studied me for a second, his head tilted in that familiar way, the way he'd looked at me in the living room. Then he nodded. "Thank you. We'll save it for a special occasion. Maybe for the rehearsal dinner." He paused. "Or for our anniversary." There it was. He couldn't help himself. Clara, who was setting the table, snorted. But later, after dinner, Robert poured us each a small measure from a different, less expensive bottle. We sat in the living room, the same living room. Clara, Clara and Linda were in the kitchen again, cleaning up. "You're a good man, Ben," Robert said, not looking at me, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You make my daughter happy. That's all I've ever wanted." "Thank you, Robert," I said. The words felt thick. "This thing," he said, gesturing vaguely between us with his glass. "The joke. It's just a bit of fun. I don't want you to think. I mean, I respect you. I do. You're going to be my son-in-law. I'm proud of that." It was the most sincere thing he'd said to me since the incident. It should have made me feel better, and part of me did feel a warm rush of relief, but another part, a smaller, meaner part, thought, "Then why can't you stop?" But I didn't say that. I just nodded and took a drink. The scotch burned, a clean, sharp pain. "I know," I said, "and I appreciate it. Really." He clinked his glass against mine. "To your future," he said. "To our future," I said automatically, and then I winced. Our future, him and me again. He caught it. He let out a short, sharp laugh, more of an exhale than a real laugh. "See," he said, shaking his head, a real smile on his face. "You can't help it either. It's just a thing now. It's our thing." And I realized he was right. In trying to diffuse it, to apologize for it with an expensive gift, I just stepped right back into it. That reinforced it. It was a loop I couldn't break out of. It was our thing, mine and Robert's. A stupid, tiny moment that had grown roots and vines and wrapped itself around everything. The wedding is in 6 weeks. The suits are fitted. The venue is booked. The cake is chosen. Clara is vibrating with excitement. I am excited too. I am. I want to be her husband. I want to share a life with her. I want to have kids with her, in a house that's maybe a little bigger than our apartment, with a yard. But I also know exactly how the wedding day will go. I can already hear the laughter during the speeches. I can see the knowing looks from the guests when Robert and I shake hands at the altar. I can picture the photos we'll have to pose for, the ones where we pretend to argue over Clara. They'll be in the album forever. Our kids will see them one day and ask about them, and we'll tell the story, and they'll laugh, and it will be a cute family story. A classic. And I'll smile when I tell it. I'll probably even laugh. Because it is funny. Objectively, it's a hilarious thing to have happened. A perfect, ridiculous human error. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, when I'm alone in my car or in the shower, I think about that other version of me. The one whose brain didn't short-circuit. The one who said the 14 correct words in the right order. The one who got a quiet, sincere blessing from Robert, a firm handshake, maybe a manly hug. The one whose engagement story is just, I asked her dad, and he said yes, and then I asked her, and she said yes. A simple story, a boring story. I'll never have that story. My story is the other one, the cringeworthy one. The one that's taken on a life of its own. It's not just a story anymore, it's a character I play in my own life. The bumbling fiancé, the almost son-in-law who almost married the father. I'll walk down the aisle in 6 weeks. I'll say my vows. I'll kiss my bride. And somewhere during the reception, Robert will slap me on the back and call me husband as a joke, and everyone will chuckle, and I'll know that I am, finally and forever, part of the family. On their terms. Because of a mistake I made one night in a beige living room, when my brain went on vacation and left my mouth in charge.